Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Enough.
Welcome
So, as
back.
you can see, that is not Noah. So, if you didn't catch it last week, Noah will no longer be hosting the show. We are very sad, but we are very happy to have Peggy here. So, Peggy, why don't you kind of introduce yourself so they know who they're listening to?
Hey guys, I'm Peggy. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm a college student at Rice University. I've known Nico for a while. We both have some similar church connections, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we are very happy to have you here and to help us out. So today's episode is another saint story. So this is the saint story for October, and we're talking about Saint Patrick. So I guess as us Orthodox, we don't really tend to think of Saint Patrick as like an Orthodox saint, or at least I never did until I kind of did more research on him. And I think this is what happens with a lot of like Western saints that were pre-schism. But Saint Patrick is an Orthodox saint. He lived in the fifth century, which puts him, before the Great Schism, and that makes him an Orthodox saint. And I think it's really cool that we have all of these Western saints that we can look to and to like learn more and see cool examples of their lives to grow closer to Christ. Without going too much into all of that, though, let's just start talking about him. So, um, you said, Peggy mentioned this before we started recording, but he came from a family of a priest and a deacon, right?
Yeah, he came from a family that was pretty involved in the church, but he wasn't super involved himself at first.
Yeah. So at the age of 16, he was captured and taken to Ireland as a slave. And so it was kind of during like this part of his life that he developed a relationship with God. And like it says, he started to pray frequently. And so he kind of almost became like a monastic in a sense, where he would constantly be praying while he was doing whatever they had him do as a slave. And it wasn't until the age of 22 that God gave him a vision telling him that he'll be like set free from Ireland and he'll be able to go back home. And so after escaping and becoming a free man, he had another dream, and he saw the people of Ireland calling him, and they said, they told him to come walk among them again. So this is kind of just like them saying, hey, like, come lead us, like, be our shepherd. And he does eventually get back there, but it takes a little while. And so he was ordained bishop in the year 430, and soon after went back to Ireland, where he established many churches and grew the faithful across the lands. And Peggy, you can maybe talk about this a little bit more, but Ireland at this time was like a very pagan country, right?
Right. They were not following Christianity yet. They maybe had heard of it, but definitely weren't practicing. And then when St. Patrick came and was trying to spread the faith, he got a lot of pushback because people were following different gods and demons and different powers. There was a group called the Druids that he really had to talk to a lot about this. But he was able to show them that, sure, maybe there's other powers around, but the ultimate and greatest power that can really overcome anything and anyone is God.
Yeah, which is just so cool to see. And like we see this like with a lot of the early leaders of the church after Christ, when they were going to like baptize all the nations. They had to go through kind of these pagan lands, because that was the thing of the world in a sense, like in Greece and Rome and all of that. So he did this to Ireland, and one of my favorite things that is more of like a tradition that we say and not necessarily fact is that he taught like the Trinity through the imagery of a shamrock.
Right.
And so he holds this in his icons. And so we'll see if I'm tech savvy enough to put a picture of his icon up while I'm editing this. We'll see. So he holds a shamrock, and he basically explains the Trinity through this, because the shamrock has three leaves, but it's all one. So just as the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit are three, they are one. And so he kind of spread this throughout Ireland and used something um, that they could kind of imagine to teach Christ and to teach the Trinity, which is what a lot of the saints did. They would go, and it was even what Christ did with the parables. He took the common things of the day, like farming and other things. I'm drawing a blank, but he used that to tell his parables and to try to let those who had ears to hear. And there was something about snakes, and I still don't really know, but Peggy knows because we were talking about this before. So this is also like a tradition or a legend, right?
Yeah, so I think that from what I can tell, St. Patrick is credited with expelling snakes from Ireland. And to this day, apparently, there are no serpents or snakes around. So he gets some major props for that one.
Yeah, I could go without some snakes. So maybe if we want to do something in America here, St. Patrick, that'd be pretty cool. Um,
Honestly.
but yeah, I don't know. He's just a super cool saint. I honestly still have not fully grasped like his whole life or really know too much about him, but I think he's just really cool. And the thing that mainly like the two things I really like about him is that he is a Western saint, and like, that's just like I was saying in the beginning, it's not really something we think of as Orthodox because, the Eastern Orthodox Church, we don't really look into the West too much, but we have like centuries of history with the West. And then I've just always loved the shamrock thing. Like it kind of helped me make sense of the Trinity. And I think it's just a really cool imagery. And also he has this really, really cool prayer. It's very, very long. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's this excerpt that I really like. And I think those listening may I don't even know what I just said, may enjoy. Holy cow. It's been a week, guys. Anyways, so it goes, Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ when I arise, Christ in the heart of everyone who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in every eye that sees me, Christ in every ear that hears me. I rise today through mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through the belief in the threeness, through confession of the oneness of the creator of creation. I just love that. It gives me like the chills every time I hear it.
Awesome. I remember when I first heard it, I was at church camp and I immediately wrote it down. I had to do it from memory. I just wrote it down immediately, and I was like, okay, why do I enjoy this so much? And I think it's because you really get this sense of like the all-encompassing nature of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's before us and beside us and everywhere. And I think before I heard that prayer, I knew that, but just the way it's worded is so clear. Like no matter where you turn, even like within yourself is Christ. So I think that's an awesome prayer. I have it right by my bedside by my icon corner.
Yeah, for sure. And like that's just a small excerpt, but the rest of it, it's kind of a morning prayer, I arise, I arise. And it's just the whole thing is like that. It just is a constant reminder that God is always there and he's like around you no matter what, which is something that's like super easy to forget in our just day-to-day lives when we're busy, we're stressed with school or with jobs. It's so easy to forget and slip our minds, like I don't know how many times I forget as I'm just going down around my day and I'm like, oh God, pray something, do something, or I look at my icon, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real and stuff. So this is just a beautiful prayer. And it gives that message that God truly is enough.
Totally. I think one thing that I was told one time is that really every moment of our lives, there's a demon and an angel trying to get us to go one way or another.
Right,
and
the
I think
classic
when I think
one on each soldier.
Exactly. Like our whole lives, whenever you're making a decision, like one side's pulling you one way, the other side's pulling you the other. And I think when you realize that God's always there and God's always with us and that God is enough, it's easy to just turn to him in those moments and take a moment to center yourself and pray. And I think St. Patrick was really big on unceasing prayer. He talks about that a lot in his Confessions, which is kind of his autobiographical thing that he wrote. And he talks a lot about when he was with animals and spending time in Ireland, he learned how to center himself in unceasing prayer, which is something we talk about a lot in Orthodoxy, but that can be really hard to do. So finding time in your day to just take 5 minutes to start, or finding little ways to do it. I know one time I tried, like every time I was climbing the stairs, I was like, I'm going to say, Lord have mercy on every step. And I always forget to do it. But every once in a while I remember. And I think finding little ways to incorporate it into your day is really helpful.
It's super important. And that's just kind of the whole message of this podcast, remembering God is enough and to bring that into your everyday life. And that's the whole goal of life. It's the Orthodox life. So without further ado, God is enough. And we'll see you all next week.